Hey everyone, today we're going to learn how to play English opening. I'm going to show you the most important systems Black can play against English and how to deal with those systems. But also keep in mind something really interesting. I have played English opening for many years as a professional chess player. So it's a line I have great memories with. Just letting you know about that. Keep that in mind when you're watching this lesson. Let's go to the board.
We have English opening on the board after 1 c4. The idea with this move is that we are controlling the center, specifically the square d5, but this time there is something different. We are using a bishop pawn, which means if at some point there is a trade, we'll be trading a side pawn for an enemy central pawn. So we keep our two central pawns, as Black will have only one. Black can develop pieces basically as they want. So I show you this scheme I really like. This is going to work really well against most of the alternatives Black can try. So in this scheme, after c4, we want to develop the knight over c3. The kingside bishop is going to be developed over the fianchetto, so we will play g3 and bishop g2. And this knight is going to be really well on e2, so we want to play e3 and knight there. Of course we want to castle later, and one of the main ideas in this scheme is that we want to play on the queen side. We're going to understand this much better if we see some moves, for both sides. So let's play one of the main systems Black can try against English, and it is a system with a King's Indian defense against English. So they can try, for example, knight f6, d6, g6, develop the bishop. Sometimes they play e5. So we're going to use this scheme against one of the most popular ways of development Black can try against English. So let's see. We want to play knight c3 here. They could be playing g6 and g3, bishop g7. We said bishop goes to g2. One of the keys in English opening is the control of the square d5. Observe, from move number 1, we are playing c4, controlling that square. So in many lines, the control of this square is going to be a key concept, and probably we want to use it at some point in the middle game for our knight. Also observe that we are targeting there with some pieces. Also, even the knight, when we develop this knight over e2, that's one of the main ideas, that the knight on e2 is going to be connected to d5, because we could be playing knight f4 or knight c3 in some lines. But also the knight on e2 is going to is not going to be blocking the bishop as it is on f3, so we keep a very nice control of that square. Well, let's say Black castles and we play e3 here, as we were saying. Black can play d6. This is the King's Indian system we were saying. And as we mentioned, knight g e2. Black could try e5. That's a very common move in English. I have seen it in many games. We castle, let's say something like knight c6, and here something normal like d3. This is a move we need to play to defend this pawn, but also the bishop could be developed at some point over d2. Usually we don't have like a rush with this bishop. Observe, this bishop is not going to be blocking the rook on a1, because this rook is actually going to b1 and we are pushing over b. So the bishop is not like a big problem here on c1. Of course we can develop it later, maybe over this diagonal is going to be fine. In some positions we can use the fianchetto, but well, that's like a different plan. I mean, in general, if we attack on the queen side, we delay a little a move like this because we could be blocking the rook. So the main idea is that we don't need to rush that much with the bishop, because the rook is going to be fine here on b1. So a normal move here is bishop a6, and here observe Black has a very nice control of d5, like 3 pieces, so they could be pushing over there. We want to avoid that move, so in this position we are going to play knight d5. Let's say Black plays here queen d7. That's one of the best moves in this position, and then we are going to connect the two knights. We are going to play knight e, c3. One more time, observe something we were saying about the square d5 in English opening. And this is a tricky position. Here Black can try bishop a3, trying to get rid of our fianchetto's bishop. And here we can try this nice idea: knight takes knight, bishop takes knight, and knight d5. And the idea is that we are attacking the bishop and we are attacking c7 at the same time. So in this position, black needs to play the move bishop d8. That's the only move for black, defending that pawn on c7. But as you can see, that position is a little unnatural for that bishop. It's blocking the two rooks. It's not covering the fianchetto. So in general, we could say white is slightly better here. But let me show you what can happen if the bishop goes here. Now the queen is overloaded, defending a3, defending c7. So we can get one pawn for free. We trade and we capture. And this is a good position for white. We have a pawn up, so we have a clear advantage here. There is a common mistake we need to avoid. Observe, in this position I said knight takes knight, and this is a move we shouldn't forget. I have seen some people blundering here. They see the queen overloaded and they say, well, I can just take the pawn for free here. So I trade and I capture, but this is actually a mistake because the knight is still on f6. So in this position, black can play knight g4, and then there's no way to defend h2. This is winning for black. So be careful with that, with the order of the moves in a position like this. So we trade first, and then we play knight d5, and then we are trading if we want and if we can capture that pawn on c7. So that's a tricky and interesting line if black plays bishop a3. But also, let me show you the main idea or the main plan for these positions. So let's assume normal moves for black, like rook f e8, for example, and then we want to play here rook b1, and we want to push over here over the queen side. The idea is that once the knight is not there, the bishop will put a lot of pressure on the diagonal. There are some ideas with the capture on b7. Also, in some positions, the bishop can go over a3, the queen can go over a4. Also, we can use this pawn to create even more weaknesses over this diagonal in some lines. So the idea is that we have some ways to increase the pressure on the queen side. Let's say rook a d8, we play b4 here. Also, the knight on d5 is helping us because it's controlling the board from the center. And that's the plan for this popular scam. So as I mentioned, this scam we played here is going to work pretty well if black plays the King's Indian system, but also against most of the developments black can try. This is going to be a really nice weapon, playing and taking some space on the queen side, but also controlling the center and specifically d5. But we cannot make a video about how to play English opening and not talk about the symmetrical variation. So let's see how can we play against this line. So let's say c4 and black plays c5, and this is one of the most common replies you're gonna see when you play English. But here we have many ways to develop pieces. I'm just gonna show you some ideas. Usually we play here knight c3. This is going to be very well. And let's say black develops the knight over c6. Something we can do is the same scam we saw against the King's Indian system, like g3, bishop g2, and knight e2. And this is going to work pretty well. We can still castle king side. We can still play rook b1 and play on the queen side. So that is going to be perfect here. But also you can do other things. For example, you can develop the bishop over the fianchetto and not play on the queen side. Instead, you can play a little in the center or on the king side with moves like f4. So let me show you what can happen. Let's say a move like g3 and bishop g2, like e3 and knight e2. So let's say they castle, we castle, and this is a common position for this kind of lines. As I was saying, instead of playing on the queen side with a3, rook b1 and b4, we can play our ideas like, for example, b3 and develop the bishop over the fianchetto. That's a plan here. And we can try some break over f4 later, so our rook is going to be better, and also our bishop a little better over there. That's a really interesting way to play against symmetrical variation. Another common scam black can try against English is 4 knights. So let's say e5, we play knight c3, and then they can play knight f6. And here there are some ideas with d5. So this is probably a good moment to play knight f3, attacking the pawn on e5, developing, getting a tempo, and then black usually plays knight c6, and that's why we call this 4 knights. In this position we have some options. I really like this line with e4 just to make sure black is not playing d5 And after this e4, black has some options like bishop c5 or bishop b4, the two best moves here. After bishop b4, we are going to continue with a common development, nomad development. There's a threat here, bishop takes knight, knight takes pawn, so we should play d3 here. And in the next moves, we are playing bishop e2, we are castling, the bishop is probably going to e3, maybe we want to play a3 to make sure the knight is not creating problems for our bishop. On e3, sometimes we play a3 just to create some problems for the other bishop. So that's a very normal position. White is more or less equal. At some point they could be slightly better in these positions, but also I want to say that actually the most common reply in this position, especially in among beginners, intermediate or club players, the most common reply is going to be bishop c5, and this is actually the line we really want to get into. It's not a mistake, but it's very dynamic and very interesting. In this position we can play knight takes pawn, and the idea is that after knight takes knight, which is the best move for black, one more time this move is very tempting, but it's a mistake. It looks like our king is going to be in a bad position because we cannot castle, but actually there is nothing wrong with this. White is winning this game. We just play d4, observe how we're controlling the center. There might be a check here, but it's a little surprising the fact that there's no problem here for white. In the next move we are playing a3, and then I will have to go back. We're developing the bishop over d3, we're developing the other bishop over g5 pinning. Sometimes we can also trade it for that knight when it goes to a6. Also we are threatening e5. Observe, this knight is protecting the other knight. And the king is going to h2, where it's going to be totally safe. Observe, black does not have a dark squares bishop, and our rook is going to f1, where there is a half open file, and it's going to be really powerful there. Connected to the bishop on g5 can create many problems. Later in this video we're gonna see a game where I played this line. So instead of bishop takes f2, the right move for black in this position is knight takes e5. Then we should play d4, getting the piece back with the fork, and black should try bishop b4. That's the right move here, so they keep the bishop on the board. Pawn takes knight, knight takes e4. In this position there's a threat on c3. We can play either queen d4 or queen f3. Both moves are fine. Sometimes knight takes knight is played, pawn takes bishop e7, and this position is more or less equal. There are some ideas, for example with queen g4. This is annoying because if they play g6 they are weakening the king side. If they move the king they cannot castle. So in general it's an interesting middle game here, very playable for white. And the last system we need to understand to be in a really good shape to play English opening is when black plays this McKenna's scam. So let's say c4, knight f6, knight c3, and then e6. The idea is that they want to play d5 here very soon. I didn't mention earlier that we can transpose to queen's pawn anytime we want. So if you're a good queen's pawn player, you can do that. For example, you can play d4 here, and you're going to be playing maybe Ninso Indian after bishop b4, or Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit after d5. That's something we can do, but we don't have to do that if you don't want. We can also play e4 here, and we are still in English ground. In this position, black can still try d5, but we can play here e5. Usually the main line is going to be d4. That's what they usually play, and here we capture the knight, they capture the knight, and we capture c3, and they capture f6. That's the way this line, this McKenna's system continues. Here we are gonna develop pieces like knight f3, pawn to d4, bishop to d3, and also want to show you a nice trick here. For example, let's say we play here knight f3. The best alternatives for black here are going to be e5 or c5, but we're going to continue with our ideas. As I said, d4, we develop the bishop probably to d3, we castle, and that's a very comfortable position in general. But also, not always they will find e5 or c5. That's not so easy to play. More common are maybe here moves like knight c6, and then we can play d4. Let's say they play something like bishop d6, we play bishop d3, and there's a trick here. If black continues with a nomad development, we can play the move bishop g5, and the queen is trapped here in this position, so we get a really big advantage. If you guys have any question, let me know in the comments. Thank you guys, like, subscribe, see you on the next.